Thank you very much, Shobh. And thank you, Secretary Krishnan, for setting the stage for a deliberation, so to speak. We will be touching on virtually every point that you mentioned in the course of your presentation. And a warm welcome to you once again, all of you, to our second session today, Advancing Development in the Age of AI. Now, this is an important time to be having this conversation for a number of reasons. By 2030, we expect that AI applications are going to add some $15.7 trillion to the global GDP, unlocking massive potential across just about every sector, and certainly across the social and development sectors. And the book that was launched this morning points to how much of this has already begun to happen in India across certain key development sectors. Now, the UN Secretary General has described AI as the biggest revolution since the invention of the internet. And there's speculation today that by 2030, AI could actually surpass the intelligence of all human beings combined. Now, that's a rather sobering thought. Now, at the same time, we've also heard Sam Altman telling us about how AI is compressing centuries of job turnovers into just a few years. And that's a pretty sobering thought, too. Now, India is at the center of many of these AI discussions and debates because, of course, of our very large innovation ecosystem, the massive troves of data that we generate locally, which Secretary Krishnan mentioned. We also have very, very large consumer and enterprise markets for AI solutions. And of course, then there is the demographic dividend. We have a singularly large and young AI workforce and talent pool. So all of that makes a difference. And AI for development as an idea and a concept this is an orientation that our country already has. So, for example, the National AI Strategy frames AI as a force for inclusive growth and socioeconomic transformation. And it focuses specifically on how AI can make a difference across sectors like health, education, agriculture, smart cities, and smart mobility. And so to echo Secretary Krishnan, these are not frivolous uses of AI. This is hardcore development AI use, right? And that's what India has begun to do. The India AI mission, as we just saw, has major pillars dedicated to innovation, skilling, startups, and also the promotion of scalable development solutions. And finally, India is gearing up at the moment to host the AI Impact Summit in February next year. And this is important because this is the first of these international AI summits to take place in the global south. And this is well in keeping with India's role as a spokesperson and champion for the global south. So it's a good thing that we're hosting it here. And, with the overarching theme, people, planet, and progress, the idea of AI for development is really woven into the very fabric of the conference's various tracks and sub-themes. So we hope to see you, many of you there. Now, we have an excellent panel to help us understand some of the opportunities AI presents and the risks it poses, not just for the global south, but beyond as well. So it's an absolute pleasure to introduce Brad Tytel, Deputy Director, Program Advocacy and Communications, Global Health Innovation at the Gates Foundation. Welcome, sir. Caroline Fredrickson, Director of Research at the ILO. Rajesh Gupta, who is the Dean of the School of Computing, Information and Data Sciences at University of California, San Diego. And Courtney Gregoire, Vice President and Chief Digital Safety Officer at Microsoft. So a warm welcome to all of you once again. And, let's dive straight into our questions and the panel discussion. We're going to have two rounds. In the first, perhaps a 5-minute intervention from each of you. And then we will do another shorter round after that, all right? So Brad, if we might begin with you, let's start with a few sectoral applications of AI. And this is also crucial because of what our secretary just said about India becoming the AI use case capital of the world. The global healthcare AI market is powering ahead, and we do expect it's going to reach around 190 billion by 2030. But there's still a lot of work to be done to bring digital health services to communities. And in this space, what are some of the big trends in AI innovation and use that you're seeing? And what are the difficulties of on-ground deployment?
Yeah, no, thanks so much. And it's a real pleasure to be here. And, I really love thinking about this question in the context of what the secretary just said in this whole conversation, because, what I would want to speak to is not what lessons we can learn from what we're seeing in Seattle, but what lessons we can learn from what we're seeing in India. Because ultimately, as we just heard, it is this convergence of government leadership, of private sector and innovator engagement, of international partners and domestic partners working together to actually deploy technology in the communities that it can benefit. And I think we're seeing a lot of opportunity at the Gates Foundation to partner where possible and to bring some of our catalytic abilities to learn lessons and translate some of that expertise and some of that work to other parts of the world. And we've seen that already in some of the work India has done on just the underlying technology stack, India's leadership during its G20 presidency on digital public infrastructure. Those pieces lay a foundation that we can build on as we're looking at applications and use cases in the geographies that the Gates Foundation focuses on, in addition to our partnership in India that covers South and Southeast Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa in particular. And a few of the trends we're seeing, again, have already been alluded to, and this is where you can see concrete examples in what India is already delivering on. We're looking very much at AI adoption for last mile impact. Again, impact is the ultimate goal here. We don't see AI as an end unto itself. It's a means to an end to support our work in healthcare access, in HIV prevention, in tuberculosis control, in family planning, in other areas where we bring our expertise to bear and try to help support the populations we focus on. And as the Secretary alluded to, I mean, becoming the use case capital of the world is incredibly important, because someone probably smarter than me at a different AI summit once said, and it really stuck with me, that every government wants to use AI, but not every government knows what to use AI for. And so how do we actually identify those specific use cases? And if you look at examples like the program Cough Against TB, which is already being deployed across 10 states in India, these pilots are showing that we can detect 14% more cases of tuberculosis than we would otherwise. And that includes asymptomatic patients. And this is the kind of extended reach that AI can bring to healthcare. And, you know, we see a potential opportunity for the foundation, our foundation, to try to translate some of those lessons learned to other healthcare settings for other populations. And in order to be able to support those healthcare use cases, you have to prioritize things like open and inclusive data. The Secretary just referred to the Bashini Initiative. We support an initiative in Africa called Mashikane, which is looking at how to build open and inclusive diverse language data sets to be able to ensure that AI can accept inputs from and produce results in local languages. So if we want to reach frontline populations, it has to be able to speak the language they speak, not the language we speak. And so that is where we see a real opportunity to extend these use cases and bring the kind of things we're seeing India do to healthcare applications that may not be moneymakers. Again, we mostly focus on areas of healthcare where there are market failures, where we think the foundation's capital can bridge that gap. And we're already seeing that deployment in India, and so that's where we can bring that deployment to the populations and places we care about. I definitely hear you on this being an enormous growth market, but again, for us, it's not about who can pay. We want to make sure we're solving the problems for who can't pay. And again, that is where we're seeing real applications and real use cases in India that are able to deliver on that. We do have to localize these things. We can't just sort of cut and paste applications from India to other local contexts. But we see a huge opportunity, including through convenings like the AI Impact Summit, which I do plan to be at in February, to be able to show those lessons and to be able to bring partners together to see what other lower middle income settings can learn from India's development, particularly in the healthcare space, but not just in the healthcare space.
Right. You know, thank you very much, Brad. And your point about the human-centric focus and nature of AI, this helps sort of segue into a second question to you, Caroline. And you know, this is a larger macro level question. And let me begin by throwing an ILO statistic at you. All right. Now, by 2030, ILO says that AI could destroy 83 million jobs and create only 60 million new ones. Right. So that means a net labor force contraction of 14 million jobs or so. But at the same time, you know, a trend we are seeing now is that across all AI positions globally, there's a 50% hiring gap. So people aren't quite skilled to take on the new jobs that are emerging in the field of AI, right? Now, given that, what do countries need to do around the world to skill people for this new world of work?
Thank you. And first of all, I'd just like to thank you overall for having invited me. And there is, I just have to say, a little Seattle bias over here. Courtney and I go way, way back to working together in Senator Maria Cantwell's office from Washington State. And so anyway, it's a pleasure to reconnect here in the consulate. So, you know, it's a complex question. I would say that actually our most recent research shows that AI is much more complex as a factor in the labor force than those figures might actually indicate. And that for the large really, we engage in a very deep analysis of jobs based on the tasks that make up individual jobs. And so, every job that you think about doesn't just involve one thing. People do a whole variety of things. So even the areas where we see AI as having the greatest impact in terms of being able to automate tasks that are components of those positions, they tend to be clerical work, which is one reason why women who predominate in that sector are most at risk. But even in those areas, it's a percentage of the job that is going to be automated versus other jobs where AI really has an opportunity to augment. That is, how does it make the job run better? How is it more efficient? And so in areas where you see that possibility, it's as I think the ILO provides guidance. And how do we make sure that the positives for the workforce, employers, workers, the economy, that it's facilitated in order to make those kinds of jobs more impactful, more satisfying. So I think it's quite a nuance. I mean, you could say 83 million jobs destroyed, but it really doesn't give the full flavor to what is really true, which is way more jobs are going to be moderately affected by AI rather than destroyed. And so I think the challenge is really, back to the skilling, is how do we ensure that the jobs that have more aspects that are automatable, if that's a word, can be automated. How do we make those? How do we help transition those workers into jobs where their skills are going to be augmented? And other research that we've done in the area of skills has looked more generally using large language models, actually, to analyze from different data sets. What are employers looking for, and what kind of skills do workers have? So it kind of using LinkedIn and using other places to see what are people looking for, what are the workers, what are potential employees suggesting their skill sets are. And it's, again, much more complex because most employers aren't really looking for someone who is capable to use AI, who has real AI skills, but somebody who is well-rounded. So they're very foundational skills that are much more significant in terms of, can someone learn how to use AI? Do they have the basic skills? Are they, and some of it is the human-centered aspect, right? The human capacity, the ability to work with other people. So that kind of three-dimensionality, I think, is a really important factor, that it is essential for governments and employers and worker representatives to collaborate on developing the kinds of job training, lifelong learning programs, educational trajectories that will enable students and employees to transition through these different job changes and different skills that they're going to need throughout their lives. So I think it may be not quite, the right answer to say, train people on AI. That may be a component of it, but they need to have those basic skills really to be able to move into a job that has an AI aspect.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for that. Professor Gupta, if we might come to you next. Access to quality data, and of course the analysis of it lies at the heart of all AI development, and that's going to become more and more important in the days ahead. Now, how can countries start building a stronger culture of open data, right? And also, as a quick follow-up to that, you're very closely involved with the world of higher education and research in the field of data sciences. How do we need to start strengthening data science as a discipline for some of this to happen?
Well, Nirban, first of all, thank you for inviting. And it was fun working with you on the task force report. That's very nice that has come out. Let me first step back a little bit. And the answer to the questions that you posed will fall out from it. What exactly are we talking about when we say AI? Are we talking about a piece of gadget, a piece of equipment, a device, or a method, or algorithms or data that somehow will change the world? let's first get this thing right, what it is not. It is not another device. Let's go over this. Think about humans and machines, and it will not take very long. Think about humans and machines. For all our experience as humanity, machines had a limited context. They dealt with parameters, numbers, in and out. Humans had the state information, had the context, had the awareness. The uncertainty of interaction was with the humans, not with the machines, hopefully. The machines were very definite. How they're going to respond, what they're going to do was very well understood. And when they did not, it was a fault. Now think about a machine in front of you that is working with you, that has more state than you do, that has more context than you do, that has more uncertainty than you do in its response, in its actions. That is AI. So it's a lot more scary than you would imagine it to be. Think about a pet that might also have teeth to bite into. It might expand your engagements at emotional level, but it might also, and may not replace your spouse, but it might also be dangerous. A python as a pet. So here's the deal. When we talk about AI, there is no question that anybody who interacts with AI at any level, whatever goes under AI, walks away amazed. And it's not just ordinary people, let me tell you, it's the researchers who have been working in AI for the last 15, 20 years. They cannot believe that they can summarize a 200-page document accurately or write a poem with the right number of characters and it still makes sense. So there is no question that the capability is mind-boggling. And people have done, there was a study that came out from Stanford earlier this year that sort of studied which jobs will be automatable and removable because of this capability. But we have to think about now, if that is AI, and that is part of the society, that disruptive transformation is not just one that we have seen a precedent of. In fact, we have not seen a precedent of it. Not internet, not transistors, not cars, and so on. So now, coming back to a question. Data sharing is a part of it. Why is it a part of it? And again, just one lesson for you to just take away. There is parametric data and there is non-parametric data. In fact, the parametric optimization and non-parametric. What do I mean by that? If you were to build a transistor circuit, a transistor device, how it behaves is a parametric model. It has a bunch of parameters. You give me those parameters, I can tell you how it will behave. But what if you have only data as experience and use that to predict because of some new machine you have, that's called a neural network, that will tell you what the output will be. That's the non-parametric data. Those data sets, sometimes also known as models, by the way, are very specific. So there are companies in India, for example, that are building their own foundation models. They're building their own dictionaries and alphabets that have no parallels here. They will evolve, and they will have different capabilities. And that stack needs to be developed. Now, coming back, I think I already overspoke, but so that's the first, these two differences once you understand. Academia is the first place where we are struggling with. There are 200,000 professors, full professors in this country. And when you look at it, and about 800,000 total professors, when you look at it, what majority of what they do, there's no question that even if slight stretch of imagination tell you, most of these jobs can be done by AI now. And that's how some people are looking at it. But I think I will have to expand more, which I don't have time now. But this is the way to think about it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Gupta. And Courtney, we will now come to you for our final question of round one. Now, Microsoft has been closely associated with multilateral efforts to advance the global governance of AI. And what have some of your major recommendations been for making AI more safe, inclusive, and responsible? And why is AI safety so important? And perhaps more so for the global South and frameworks like the SDGs.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for convening this important conversation. Not only do we have a slight Seattle bias, I'm sorry, we've got a West Coast bias here too. So somehow you have a panel. I really liked where the dean went in terms of up-leveling for a second. So maybe putting this into context, we hear a lot of the time that the key to tackling challenges is innovation. We truly need to think about artificial intelligence as the transformative general purpose technology of our time. It has the potential to turbocharge progress in driving economic growth and serving humanity with the UN's goals through AI diffusion around the world. But it demands responsible deployment to unlock inclusive economic progress. Right now, access remains uneven despite advances in uptake. But we need to think about this in the context of previous general purpose technologies. The world needs to avoid the pitfalls faced by the GPT of electricity over the course of the last 150 years, where some 1.18 billion people globally still lack reliable access. AI diffusion will be shaped not just by countries' technological readiness, but as you asked about, really human and institutional choices. So Microsoft's core belief is that AI diffusion can unlock new pathways for economic development, especially in regions facing structural barriers, but people will really only use and benefit from technology they can trust. And that's why we've leaned in to talk through core governance opportunities. It's great to be here today because of the great work your panel did. It's always hard to take credit from another colleague, Amanda Cragg, who joined you on the task force. What we know is that governance and innovation must go hand in hand to build trust in technology. And that is why we have both participated, as the Secretary indicated, through the development of the G20 principles to the AI Action Summit, and then critically how India is thinking about this through the AI Impact Summit. The Secretary said it best. We need to explain how AI is going to positively impact the human experience, and that is through impact. So when we think about governance, we need global governance. We recognize that as a global technology company that understands where global governance plays a critical role, but it must be a priority to do that with local needs. And so thank you for the partnership to do just that through this strategy framework. We also know that building on existing frameworks can help avoid regional fragmentation and reduce complexity and uncertainty that can harm innovation. One key challenge and opportunity we face right now is the opportunity to move from responsible AI principles that have been well documented and well discussed to practical action. How do we help all the players in the ecosystem understand not just the expectations, but how they can put them into the development of foundational models, to the development of applications, to what it means for an average human leveraging all this new technology. One opportunity that we've been partnering with has been with Singapore, who's pioneered a global AI assurance sandbox that enables technology platforms to come in and fine-tune their applications and their models to serve specific sectoral needs, whether financial or healthcare. That global regulatory sandbox is a model that we know will help build trust with key institutional stakeholders. And we can talk a little bit more about what trust means. It also makes sure that we are promoting inclusion, especially in underserved communities. And so we will continue to invest in some key initiatives. First and foremost, how we key the infrastructure investment. 2.6 billion people today lack internet access. Through our Airband initiative, we will continue to partner to ensure that the fundamental underlying infrastructure is there. In 2023, Microsoft partnered with Al Jaldi to build connectivity, extending that to over 500,000 beneficiaries. But a key component that my team worked on, it's one thing to connect, it has to be partnered with the skilling and the understanding how to do it safely. Building in digital literacy and the approaches to safety at the time of connectivity enables communities to leapfrog some of the challenges we've seen around the world. Through our new Microsoft Elevate initiative, we will be combining both technology for education and skilling. And as Caroline mentioned, how we think about this with the wonderful data set we have through the LinkedIn platform that helps us see across regions, where are there gaps between skills and needs of employers? Partnering that into how we move that into skilling programs and partnerships is the way that we can bridge that gap. Lastly, it's been discussed, but it cannot be understated, the need to truly advance multilingual AI. We have to admit this first wave was completely pre-trained on English as the core language. That is not going to unlock the opportunity. So our Microsoft research in India has been leading an interdisciplinary team of researchers focused on this critical work. They recently released Updesh, a synthetic data set of 8.6 million examples designed to empower small language models with culturally grounded, linguistically rich data. It currently covers 13 Indic languages, including Hindu and Urdu, and we know that is foundational to unlocking the true potential. So I hope we can keep talking about this, but we know that the governance and the partnership here, and looking forward to that February AI Impact Summit.
Okay, yeah. So I understand what that implies. It implies we have just. All right, 1 minute per speaker now for our second round, which is really a sort of rapid fire round with a common question to all of you. And this touches upon a point that Ambassador Gill drew attention to this morning: startups, right? Now, a lot of AI for development work today is being led by startups. But there's also a large body of research that shows that almost 90% of AI startups fail within their first 5 years. So, with reference to the spaces that you work in, what would your advice be to startups for thriving and scaling in the age of AI?
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
start
if
with you,
there's,
Brad, yeah.
so I come into AI from the global health space, and if there's one thing tech and global health share, it's a tendency towards startups or pilots. And so we need to be thinking about scale. And so we need to be thinking about scale now, even as we're building the underlying technology stack, the infrastructure. How do we actually take proven technologies to scale? And certainly when it comes to health and the use cases that we care about at the Gates Foundation, a lot of that is about rigorous pilots, but it's about rigorous evaluation. How do we know what works and separate the good from the bad? Because there's a lot of AI technology being developed. How do we then work to embed this work in and with governments, which again, India has been a model on. It's the ministry leading this work, not a foundation. And how do we make sure then that we can resource and build a sustainable model to be able to support the technology's deployment, particularly for frontline use cases, including some of the more expensive underlying stuff like compute capacity. So we need to be thinking about scale now, and we need to be building that pathway for the most vulnerable now.
Okay. Thank you, Brad. Caroline, over to you.
Right. Well, thank you so much. It's a great question. I want to build on both of the statements that have been made about trust and inclusion. It's really an essential part of what the International Labor Organization focuses on, which is social dialogue, which means that this has to be a collaborative effort, including governments, workers' representatives, and employers. And this goes to the critical part of ensuring that right from the uptake, as Courtney said, people are engaged in understanding safe use. But this also goes towards ensuring that there's buy-in from all of the social partners and addresses major concerns that are held by many around data privacy, algorithmic management, bias mitigation, and reskilling initiatives. So I think this aspect of ensuring that when AI is adopted, whether in a startup or whether in a larger pre-existing company, that this has to be a real, a central part.
It's hard to add, particularly to the Gates Foundation, who knows very well how to run pilots and evaluate them. But I think build on those themes. One, we've had a healthy conversation on this panel. We need the cultural, societal diffusion uptake that has to underlie. The only thing I would add on top of ensuring that you're thinking about deep evaluation as to what worked, what didn't, being ready to pivot quickly. I think fail fast is the lesson that we all recognize in this space. The truth of the matter, in pilots that are effective, they're often built consistent with national development strategies. So kudos to India and the clarity of the national development strategy. That linkage enables the scale. We often see pilots fail when they're detached from a societal acceptance or a broader strategy.
Professor Gupta.
Startups are always about taking a risk, but not the startup taking the risk, is the investor taking the risk. Startups tend to solve either the scientifically hard problem or a clever solution. In both cases, they have to make sure that they are close to somebody's pain point. And that is whether it could be another technology provider or a consumer, doesn't matter. The startups that fail often are trying to improve a thing that is already improved quite a bit. And so being close to a pain point is important.
Okay, thank you very much. That was a rather loaded question to actually answer in 1 minute or less, and all of you did that. So thanks a lot. With that, we will bring our panel to a formal close, but absolutely great having you here. Wealth of insights. And, in case you haven't quite realized, our panel also actually represents academia, big tech, philanthropy, as well as intergovernmental organizations. So this has been an excellent mix of speakers to have, and this is exactly why we need to have more convenings like this. So thank you very much to our panelists.